This is going to be a video response for Chrissie. It's something that I've promised her for the past week or so. And I was going to do this response in a manner more scholarly where, you put up a bunch of graphs and links and all kind of other stuff to kind of legitimize what you're saying. But after thinking about it, I decided not to do it that way. And I'm going to do it the way I would talk to my daughter, because she's close to my daughter's age. And I'm going to explain to her the way I would explain to my own daughter about women, about marriage, and about the state of the Black community. So I'm going to talk to you like you were my daughter. And the first thing I will say, sweetie, as far as marriage and mating and finding a man is concerned, you got to do the best that you can. Because the whole world has changed, and it's going to change even more. We're living in a world where men and women don't need each other like they used to. 100 years ago, men and women had to get together, had to get married, had to produce a family to survive. That is no longer the case anymore. So marriage is not what it was, or not what it was built to be. Relationships are going to get scattered. The gender dynamic is going to get worse. In fact, there won't be a gender dynamic I would suspect in about 10 or 15 years. It'll be just individuals bumping into each other, which is almost what you have now. The only problem is that the rules haven't caught up with the times. The marriage contract depends on old-fashioned Western patriarchy. The laws that are written are fashioned from the tradition of old-fashioned patriarchy, where men actually owned their children and owned that woman's womb. That's what he bought her for. That's what he provides and protects for. Because the children used to be the wealth of the family. If you had children, you had hands, you had work, you had a legacy, and that's what you built with. That is no longer the case, because we are existing and living in a world that really doesn't need people anymore. The Industrial Revolution separated production from human labor. Human labor started to become redundant within the first 10 years. That's why the fertility rate of women went down dramatically. In the beginning of the 18th century, a woman needed to produce 8 or 9 children for a family to succeed. By the end of the 18th century, 3 was too many, because they were no longer assets, they were liabilities. And 200 years later, that's even more so. Children are liabilities. They're not assets, and especially in an urban condition, because now they have to be protected. Modern societies are no longer safe for children, so now they have to be protected like pets. So it costs $250,000, $300,000 to raise a child in an urban setting. So the need for families, or the need for a man to have a wife, is not a practical one, it's an emotional one. The need for a woman to have a husband is not a practical one anymore, it's an emotional one. And we know one thing about emotions. Emotions are flighty. If you've ever worked on a job for 15 or 20 years, you know that if you went to that job every day based on emotion, 80% of the time you wouldn't show up. You will show up at that job because you have to. It's a financial necessity. It's a practical necessity. And institutions survive on practical necessities. There is no practical necessity for marriage anymore. That's why it's declining all over the world. As modern mechanization moves in and urban cities start to take over all over the world, you can see the drop in marriage. It's not a black thing. It is not a white thing. It's an advanced human thing. Families are arbitrary, and that's what you're feeling. That's what you're seeing. The only thing is your biology hasn't caught up. Your need to reproduce a child has not caught up with the environment that you live in. It hasn't caught up with the culture that has shifted. 40 years ago, when the feminist system was actually set up in the West, basically not only to equalize, but to raise the feminine over the masculine, women, they thought, were supposed to replace men. And men were supposed to replace women in the duties that they did. Surprise, surprise, surprise. 40 years later, they find out that women don't want to replace men. They don't want a house husband. They don't want a subservient man. Feminists falsely and maybe sillily wanted to follow the model, the family model of the black community. Basically, that's what they did. They saw that in the black community, because of our dysfunction, because of our broken culture, that the women were superior in that model. And they were. It was an artificial construct coming out of slavery. It was a dysfunctional construct coming out of slavery. And the feminists decided to copy it. So what you're getting as a black woman is a double whammy. The culture that you came out of already uplifted the feminine and emasculated the males. And now you're being taught in a feminist system to do what? Uplift the feminine and emasculate the males. So all feminism is doing is reinforcing what was already wrong in the black community. There is and never has been a patriarchy in the black community. You can go back in the historical record. You can read The Philadelphia Negro by W. Du Bois in 1890. You can read The American Dilemma by Gunnar Myrdal that was written in 1950. You can read the Moynihan Report in 1965. You can read The Truly Disadvantaged by William Julius Wilson in 1987. They all say the same thing. It's nothing new. I'm good friends with a marriage counselor and businesswoman here in Los Angeles, and she says basically the same thing. Black women going to have to get off that Caucasian clone bullshit and realize that the facts on the ground is that you didn't wake up black. You didn't wake up white. You woke up black. And no matter what your white feminist school system is teaching you, the reality is that you are black and you live in a black community and you are seen as such. And in your culture is not white culture. You exist in a country that's white and patriarchal, or used to be white and patriarchal because it no longer is. And your culture is a matriarchy, and it always has been. It's matriarchal, it's lower caste, and it always has been oppressed. And that's not going to end anytime soon. And if you want to make a family, and you want a family, you want a husband, you want to do things, you're going to have to do things that are exceptional. You cannot follow the white model. So all that bullshit that you talk about, that black people talk about as far as competing against white men in their system, it ain't going to happen. You can work with it. You can work within it. You're going to have to find a way around it. You're going to have black people are going to have to start making their families work with what they have. You cannot change the environment, sweetie. It doesn't work that way. Either you have to go to an environment where it's more conducive to what you want to do, or you're going to have to work with the materials that you have. Black people are not changing this environment. White people can't even change this environment. The working class white people are subject to it. They can't change it either. That's how come white men are committing suicide at 4 times the rate of the national average. That's a fact. You can read about it. That's why you got them white crackers up in Oregon protesting against the government because they're sick of it. So you're going to think the minority of black folks with no weapons and no means of outside support is going to come in and change a system that doesn't belong to them in the most powerful country in the world. It ain't happening, sweetie. I don't care what Sergeant Willie Pete says. It ain't happening. You have to work within it. And you have to work with what you have. And what you are working with is a damaged people. Trying to get them to act normally is not going to happen. If you look in your own biology and your own family upbringing, you didn't grow up on the Cosby Show. I didn't grow up on the Cosby Show. Broken black families are normal for us. It was normal for my grandmother when she grew up, and she was born in 1910. It was normal for my mother. My own family was dysfunctional. That's the norm. I can tell you, I'm a baby boomer. I'm damn near 60 years old. Dysfunctional black families are normal. Okay, that's the norm. That's the material that you have to work with. And when you have a functional black family, that is abnormal. That is the exception to the rule. That's because two black people came together, worked very hard against the grain, against their cultural norms to make it happen. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to make a decision that your situation is not going to be perfect, because marriage is never perfect. Gender relationships are never perfect. I can tell you that. I've had six-figure girls and I've had welfare girls. And I can tell you, from my personal experience, ain't a goddamn dime's worth of difference. I can tell you that as an older man that grew up in a much more stable society, in a much more stable community than this one. Ain't a dime's worth of difference. You know that for yourself because you work in that environment, and you've been around ratchet friends, and you've been around six-figure girls, corporate girls that went to college, got an education. Ain't a dime's worth of difference, because our culture is broken and our culture is fucked up. And all of us carry that cultural pathology if we were born here in the United States. You cannot escape it. It is what it is. So you have to read, you have to study, you have to make a decision, because it's not going to be made for you. You're not going to find a perfect situation. Even if the guy is a billionaire and he came from money, because I can tell you, them cats that have a long line of their great-great-grandfather was a doctor and they've had money throughout their whole family, they're just as screwed up as the rest of us, because no black person can escape that cultural pathology. None of us. Absolutely, positively none of us. So you have to make a decision. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to happen. And I got to make it happen. And I got to get down to business. Pick the best guy you can. If you're going to have children, have them. Make sure that his bus is where you want to go, and you're going to have to tough it out. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about your children. It's not about you and your comfort. It's about what are you going to produce out of this marriage. If you're thinking about your own happiness and your own personal freedom, or whatever that means to you, do not get married. I told that to my younger brother. Do not get married if that's what you want. If you want personal happiness, I would suggest you don't get married in this environment. Period. I would tell that to a man especially, and a woman too. I would tell any black man, do not get married in this environment. 80% of white men between the ages of 18 and 35 are not married and do not plan to get married because of this environment. Marriage, for the most part, is dying, and they're getting ready to put the nails in the coffin. On the second tip, I'm going to talk about aggressive black females. I don't want to make this too long, so I'm going to be brief with this. Black females are on record to have the most testosterone in the world. Okay. Secondly, African culture has a good mix of what we call patriarchy or loose patriarchy and a matriarchy. They're actually blended together. So the elevation of black women is not unusual on the African continent. We are perfectly willing as black people, as in the diaspora, to let black women lead. That's not unnatural to us. It doesn't matter to black people. So naturally, black women are going to be less submissive than any place else in the world. They just are. We carry that culture here under slavery, where you get emasculated males because they have to control the males. They were never afraid of the females. It was the black males that had to be controlled. It's the same thing that Thomas Jefferson said. It's the same thing that Monroe said. It's the same thing that Moynihan said. It wasn't about the black females. It was always about the black males. Black females, because of the nature of the way that our culture was adapted to this country, black females were always elevated. They always could get a job especially in an urban setting, as a domestic, as a housekeeper, as a teacher, whatnot, because the urban setting was designed for that kind of help. Black males were not trusted. Go back and read the Philadelphia Negro again. So black males were always paternalized. Black females were always elevated, and that bred black females to be more aggressive. I can tell you stories about my grandmother carrying a double axe and a razor in her boot. That was unheard of for a white female to do that. That was typical for a black female. Black females have always been more aggressive. Black females have always been more aggressive in their relationships. They've always paternalized their males. Black males have only been worthwhile in a black family to black females, what? For their labor and for sex, for breeding and for sex, which is the same thing that the slave master used black males for breeding and for labor. So black males were always encouraged. I always done the same thing. At 13, they wanted me to go to work. They could care less about my education. My family always favored my sisters. They gave them cars, they gave them clothes, they paid for everything. They paid for their education. Black boys were always left to their own devices. Go out and find a labor job. That has been the case. That's why most black males dropped out at the age of 13, 12 or 13, when he was physically able to actually go out and provide labor to the family. Black females could not do that. If she didn't get married, if she couldn't reproduce children, the only value left to her was her mind. That's why they sent black girls to school. They made sure they finished high school so that she could attract a better husband. They sent her to college so she could attract a better husband. Black females were always more educated than black males. They finished high school at a better rate. They went to college at a greater rate. They got their degrees at a greater rate. The only way that black males were able to compete is because they were stronger and they did more physical labor that was necessary, that is still necessary. So you're always going to see more white collar females than black males. So if you're looking for a white collar, upscale, educated black male, those are far and few in between. One, because the environment of the United States isn't conducive to that. And secondly, the black family structure isn't conducive toward it. They are not conducive to send their boys to college the way they are their females. That is it. It's nobody's fault. It is the way it is. That's the environment that you're going to have to work in. So black females going to have to come off that white woman's high horse and come down to reality. Otherwise, you're not going to have families, or you're going to have continue to have broken families. It is what it is. You are not Caucasian clones. That's what I would tell my daughter. Give up the freaking fantasy. Stop watching reality TV. Stop looking at the Housewives of Atlanta or Empire, because those are fantasies, sweetie. Those aren't realities. At least the welfare queens and the ratchet bras in the hood live in reality. I can say that for them, because they have to. Because if they don't do it, they don't eat. They can't be picky. They have to do what they need to do to survive. If they want a man to survive, they're going to have to take the best man they can find. And pretty soon, you know what's going to happen? The white woman's going to see the same thing. Because if she's not attractive, she's not that Barbie doll, and white men have the choice, she's going to come down and she's going to start raiding your men. That's what you're seeing now. You see Hispanic and you see white women coming down and raiding your men because you guys are on some other shit. I'm in Los Angeles. I see more black men with Hispanic women than I see them with black women. Because you cast them off, them white women, and those, especially those Hispanic women, said, I can work with this guy. But like I said, I'm going to wrap this up. I didn't mean for it to be this long. This is what I would tell my daughter. This is the way I would speak to her. I know what you're going through because my daughter's going through the same damn thing. She's college educated. She's out there on the dating scene. She's got guys hitting on her. She's a very pretty girl. But she has this stupid sense of entitlement, same way all young black women have now. What you see on that TV, what you see in social media is bullshit. That's not reality. When it comes down to real life is business, sweetie. It is business. And just like you do business on the job, you have to do business in your relationships. That's what I tell her. That's what I tell her about with my grandson. That's why I have a grandson out of wedlock, because what I told her did not take. What I told her about protecting her body did not take. She was on some individual shit. She got caught up. This is what happened. So now she is realizing the business end of life, not the fantasy, the business end of life. This is the reality of the world we live in. And as America declines, because it is declining, and we have no idea how fast it will decline and what situation we're going to be in the next 5 years, this relationship bullshit is going to have to take a back seat. Survival and you thriving in this environment is going to have to take a front seat. I don't know what you kids are on, what the fuck y'all arguing about. But that shit needs to take a back seat. You need to look at the world as it is, and America as it is, and where it's going, and get out of this fantasy land. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm talking to you like I would talk to my own daughter, because I listen to you and I hear the same things out of my own daughter. So instead of giving you a college lecture about what is, I'm going to talk to you like a dad would talk to his daughter. And that's what I'm doing. But anyway, I'm close this out. I don't know whether you're going to like this or not. I don't know whether you're going to listen to this or not, but I hope you do.